Welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, as we promised, we are going to discuss TICAD 8, this very important Japanese-African conference, which took place in Tunisia on the 27th and 28th of August, with the participation of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli on behalf of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, as he addressed the nation, addressed the gathering rather, and there were very important meetings also, which were held by the Premier on the sidelines of TICAD, including a video meeting or a meeting via video conference with his Japanese counterpart, Fumio Kishida. To discuss more about the TICAD, about its timing, about the results, about the most important decisions which were taken, or the most important topics which were discussed, we are very much delighted to have with us via phone Her Excellency Ambassador Wafaa Basseem, former Assistant Foreign Minister. A very good morning to you, Ambassador Wafaa.
Good morning.
Let's have just a quick or a panoramic vision in the first place regarding the Japanese-African, let's say, strategic partnership. How do you see its developments? I mean, is it going on the right track as the two sides want, or still it's only very few steps in a very long journey?
Of course, the journey is long, and don't forget that this is the TICAD 8. This is and if we consider that the sessions are every 2 years. The last one was in Kenya, where Japan has pledged $20 billion for development in Africa. TICAD is the abbreviation of the Tokyo Conference on African, International Conference on African Development.
Yeah.
It's an initiative on the part of the Japanese the state, which believes that Africa has great opportunities for development, and that developing Africa economically and socially is the golden door for ensuring the success of the Japanese investment in Africa. Africa is still a land or a region or a continent or a world in itself, full of opportunities, full of resources, whether human resources first. We consider the number of African people who have reached the highest levels of education, training, and who are able to lead the development in their own countries instead of staying abroad. If we consider the wealth of land, of cattle, of forests, of minerals, of oil and gas, all of this makes of this continent just a wealth of resources that need to be well exploited, well explored for the sake of the progress and development of its own people, and on the basis of a partnership, not a donor and a recipient. This is what Japan has understood and has took the initiative to prove this fair, that the African of the development would mean stability in the region, but also a great opportunity for a win-win situation between the African countries and those who come to invest and to create partnership of this young, still young continent on the way of development.
And
What
because of
are
all what you've kindly mentioned, Ambassador Basseem, Fumio Kishida, the Japanese Prime Minister, announced yesterday that Japan is pledging 30 billion US dollars for what he described as resilient African economies for the coming 3 years. Many voices were saying that the 300 billion are still not enough to meet the aspirations of both sides. But others are saying that this is the appropriate sums of money because of the other challenges facing the whole world, of course not only Japan or Africa, regarding the repercussions of COVID-19 on many economies, whether big or small, and also the Russian-Ukrainian struggle. Which is which? I mean, how do you see the number and the description, resilient economies?
Of course, it's a resilient economy because it faces different kind of challenges. The first one, as you mentioned, is the impact of COVID-19 on the economies of the whole world, but which was more severe on the African economy in particular, and the rising economies or the economies developing countries in the whole world. Mm-hmm. The second challenge, as you also mentioned, was the Russian-Ukrainian war, which caused a very strong and I think it will be a long-term crisis in food in general, especially grains, and in
energy.
The prices of oil and energy all over the world, which is an important component for the economic, industrial, agricultural development of any country and any region in the world. If we add to this the continuation of certain instabilities in the African region, of conflicts, whether local conflicts or regional conflicts, the need for resolving these conflicts and rehabilitating the societies and the countries in the post-conflict areas. We, in the post-conflict, eras, one would see the volume of challenges that the African continent is facing, the African economies are facing. Whether the $30 billion pledged by Japan are enough or not, it depends on the context you are looking at this pledging. Is it in the framework of a long, sustainable partnership between Africa and Japan? One would not consider it too small or too little, because it's part of the whole sustained, continuous. That depends very much also on the victory or on the possibility of the whole world being able to get out of the two main crises and to be able to resume its normal development. Don't forget that Japan also has added $4 billion for the encourage,ment of rising companies, private sector, PP, which is the public and public-private partnership in the African continent, to ensure and to encourage the cooperation between stakeholders different players, active players in African economy.
Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli attended the summit and addressed the gathering on behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and also he had this very important meeting with his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida via video conference, as they discussed a number of issues of mutual concern, topping the list regarding the economic side of the coin, the establishment of a Japanese industrial zone in the Suez Canal economic zone. How do you see this issue, as the Premier said it very clear that this can be the gateway for Japan to Africa? So, as also you've kindly mentioned, it's going to be another win-win situation. If you please elaborate.
The cooperation between Japan and Egypt is not born yesterday. It's a long-term cooperation that has its variations in many areas and many domains of economic, cultural development. I would show some examples like the Japanese Egyptian University, like the contribution of Japan in many construction and infrastructure projects in Egypt. Of course, the creation of a Japanese industrial zone in the free economic area in Suez Canal will be a great addition to this long partnership between the two friendly countries. Japan means technology, means industry, means scientific development, means transportation and communication, means which will be translated into job creation, more joint ventures between the two countries, enriching the human resource and the human wealth of Egypt through training, through work, attracting investments, because other countries would follow the Japanese example and would consider that Egypt is a safe haven for investments, that the legal framework and environmental framework, economic environment and investment framework in Egypt is quite attractive. So on the same token, Japanese is extending its industrial and technological arm to zones that are far from its geographic location. It makes it more closer to the Middle East, to Africa, and to Europe. That is translated and understood in the fact of creating more markets, of reaching out and being stronger and more influential on the economic and the technological side, on the cultural side, which is definitely a win-win situation for both countries, and even beyond for the two regions, the Asian region and the African, Arab, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean region.
Yes. Returning back to TICAD, if you permit me, Ambassador Basseem, regarding the most important topics which were discussed, climate change. Of course, as human beings, we do not have the luxury anymore to be isolated islands, as we say. but we should cooperate and coordinate efforts together to face this challenge. And among it was also declared that Foreign Minister Sami Shukri headed to Gabon to participate in the African Week for Climate Change. So it's Africa being, I'm not going to say the victim or exposed to the dangers without and paying the very dear price of the gas emissions and the developed countries' industrial issues. But it seems that Africa is very well on the right track to discuss this issue and to try its best to defend the coming, to protect the coming generations from sufferings of the negative repercussions of it. If you agree with me on that.
Of course I do agree with you, and the participation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Africa Week on climate change is not something to raise any surprise, but it comes within the natural discourse of the Egyptian efforts through generations as far as climate change and protection of environment is concerned since the Earth Summit in Brazil decades ago. The participation of the Egyptian Foreign Minister, Mr. Shukri, in this African Week is, of course, comes within the fact that he is the person elect for the COP27. He is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt who is hosting the COP27, which is considered by the whole world as one of the most important and challenging of the consecutive meetings and sessions of COP in general, since there is a lot of debate about who should assume the responsibilities of the climate change coming from the emissions of gas, the using of fossil energy, all of this that was necessary for the development of the developing countries in general, to the detriment of those who are still on the way of developing. They have achieved their civilization, industrial and otherwise. They were able to achieve their development as much as they wanted, while those who really paid the price are the developing countries who have the legitimate right as well to grow, to develop, to ensure progress and prosperity to their population without having to assume the burden of others' progress. So this is also the debate. How can you sort of divide or distribute the burden of protecting our world, our universe from the dangerous and threatening effects of climate change? Egypt has always been the negotiator, the African negotiator in all the forums that have discussed climate change, environment, and so on and so forth since decades. It also speaks or represents Africa in many of these important events, whether internationally or regionally, as far as sustainable development, as far as financing development, as far as financing the effects of climate change and the impact and the projects that are designed to reduce the negative impact of the climate change. So the participation of Egypt through its Minister of Foreign Affairs in Africa Week is only a consolidation of this role and more possibilities for consultation.
Very well said, Ambassador Basseem, because in every event like that, Egypt is back to Africa, and we are back to play our very positive, effective role in all domains when it's related to our black continent. Well, Ambassador Wafaa Basseem, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for your input and have a very good day. Right after the short break, we are going to return back with more, so stay tuned.